Okay, so recently I've been thinking about Ray Kurzweil's calculations for the limits of computation of matter. In his words, the ultimate laptop, if it were 2.2 kilograms of matter, it would be able to perform 10 to the 42nd operations per second. And if and that would be cold computing, but hot computing would be about 10 to the 40 or 10 to the 52nd calculations per second if you went at Planck scale. Now, I believe that this does not take into account um, the maintenance proportions of a computer of such a device. For example, let's say that in the future, when everyone uh, lives inside a digital computer, their mind has become virtualized, then what materials will we need to build such computers? We won't particularly use silicon because it's too fragile. The strongest chemical bond there is carbon, and so if we were to use carbon nanotubes, then I'd say that about 1 out of every 100 atoms would be needed to support computational function, and the rest of the 100 atoms would be supporting uh, self-maintenance and self-repair and energy storage and everything else that would be required to maintain the computer inside of a nanobot. Now, Kurzweil also mentions human body 3.0. Now, as I said earlier, it would require maintenance, it would require energy, it would require a whole host of functions that would limit the amount of computation of each nanobot inside a human body 3.0. And if we were to say that human body 3.0, the amount of atoms contained within that body would be 10 to the 27th atoms. That would leave about 10 to the 25th atoms worth of computation to utilize. Now, once we have that amount of computation, the body would, or you would need things to do in your virtual reality world. So we could say that half of the computation could be used for brain functions or virtual brain functions, and the other half could be used for simulations. Now, these simulations, in order for them to be particularly realistic, they would need to be about the same resolution as the human eye uses currently, which is about 1/10 of a millimeter. Now, if we were to say that 1/10 of a millimeter were equal to 1 bit, then we could also say that the amount of bits would be equal to 10 to the 25th divide by 2. And so a cubic millimeter times 10 to the times 5.0 times 10 to the 25th or 24th would be equivalent to about 10,000 cubic kilometers of realistic high-resolution simulation possibilities. But also that doesn't take into account how fast the nanobots would process this information. That's just the storage. And so the processing, I'd say that nanotubes, they process things at about in the terahertz range. And they could even possibly get up to the 500 terahertz range. But I think that it would be severely limited of getting up to the pentahertz range, because on Planck's scale, the energy requirements, just due to the maintenance, would create bit errors and other anomalies. So at the most, we could say that it would be about 500 terahertz range for the nanotubes to calculate the computation of the virtual simulations. Then once a person is inside the simulation, they can experience things a trillion times faster than they can in the real world. Right now, we can only experience things at the 30 frames per second. And so, if we were to say that 1 second at a terahertz range would be equal to 30,000 years, but at the 500 terahertz range, that would be equivalent to about 1,000,000 years per second inside a virtual simulation, just if the brain still was limited to 30 frames per second. And so, if we go by that, then practically inside a simulation of that magnitude, you could do whatever you wanted to. You could even simulate other brains. You could simulate multiple divergent realities. You could improve your learning skills, sort of like how Neo was able to learn Kung Fu in like 3 seconds, or Jiu-Jitsu, how whatever it was inside in the movie. And concurrently, all media that has ever been produced on would be able to be formatted onto a very limited amount of storage medium. For example, you could go walk into Best Buy and look at all those videos and all those devices and all those video games and all the movies and music, and you could practically download that in less than a second over an internet connection into your human body 3.0 and run and since you have about 1,000,000 years a second, you could experience all that media in 1 second, and then after that run simulations of any one of those videos or movies you wanted to. And since your brain functions would be enhanced to the highest levels possible, it would be pretty easy for you to master anything, just like Neo did with Kung Fu. And so that's a very unique perspective I have about what I think it would be like in the future.